Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants. We are very happy to welcome you to the 142nd session of WiseViews Leadership Conversation. And as we have been talking before commencing this, we are extremely delighted and happy to have Ms. Anu Prasad joining us. Ma'am, hearty welcome to you.
My pleasure.
I will do a brief introduction and hand it over for your opening remarks. So kindly allow me to share my screen. WiseViews Leadership Conversations are conversations with leaders, which are typically held on Fridays. We are at 142 as of this evening, and in this 142nd session, we have Ms. Anu Prasad, who is talking about building India by creating social impact, and we'll see how. This introduction and opening remarks will be for about 25 plus minutes, and then roughly about 40 minutes or so we'll have the Q&A, and this Q&A comes in two clusters, and at the end of the second cluster we'll try and open the mic for those who raise their hand and would like to directly talk to the speaker. Ms. Anu Prasad is here, so I take this opportunity and privilege to make a brief introduction about her. Ms. Anup Prasad is a seasoned leader with a wealth of experience in both the corporate and non-profit sectors. As the CEO and founder of ILSS, which is India Leaders for Social Sector, a Delhi-based non-profit organization, Ms. Anu is committed to strengthening leadership talent in the social sector. I think this is the best description. Committed to strengthening leadership talent in the social sector. Prior to setting up ILSS in 2017, Ms. Anu played a pivotal role in the establishment of Young India Fellowship, YIF, and Ashoka University, India's first liberal arts university, as their founding deputy dean and member, respectively. Ms. Anu's corporate experience includes leadership roles at multinational companies such as American Express and TNT, where she spearheaded strategic initiatives that transformed business operations. At Amex, Ms. Anu led the implementation of company's global financial reengineering and was the head of finance for the company's North India region, driving operational efficiency at TNT. An entrepreneur at heart, Ms. Anu has also co-founded and managed a successful travel company. She has also served as a consultant for the Dell Foundation on their education projects. Ms. Anu is a lifelong learner and an avid reader, actively volunteering for civic causes. Through her work at ILSS and beyond, she is driving positive change and creating opportunities for a brighter future. She also mentors young professionals and senior leaders and serves on the boards of two non-profit organizations. Ms. Anu holds a bachelor's degree from HR College, Mumbai, and an MBA from IMI, New Delhi. Her multifaceted career and unwavering commitment to leadership development for social impact make her a very powerful force in leadership development. Thank you, ma'am, for agreeing to speak with us on this session. Thank you once again. I will also make a brief introduction of my esteemed colleague, Professor R. Prasad. He is the Senior Director of the Academic Wing in ICFAI Group. He holds a rich experience of 3 decades. He was an entrepreneur before becoming an academic. He holds a BTech from IIT Bombay and a PGDM from IIM Kolkata. Welcome, Professor Prasad. Thank you so much for joining. I'll stop the screen sharing here. And ma'am, we are quite eagerly trying to understand. It's not that it's an everyday opportunity for us to learn about social impact sector. Civil society details, NGOs, not-for-profits is something that we try and understand not as part of mainstream. I mean, it is unfortunate, but here is an opportunity for us that you are with us trying to take us through what it takes to create social impact and how through very effective social impact we can build this India. I think all the members who have joined both on Zoom as well as Facebook Live this evening will be immensely benefited with your inputs. With these initial remarks, I thank you and welcome you to start the session.
Thank you, and delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I never miss an opportunity to talk about India's social impact sector. And I never miss an opportunity to ask people who are listening to be engaged, active citizens, to be a part of the solution. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to really share my work at ILSS, but really broadly, what can we do as citizens of this country to build a society for the future, for our generations to come. So I'm going to begin with just sharing a small deck. And so ILSS really, we were born from an idea 5-6 years ago of the fact that while there is now, CSR, committed CSR funding coming into the sector, there is a new age philanthropy coming into the sector. How are we supporting the social impact sector to strengthen itself? A lot of nonprofit organizations are very small, don't are very committed leadership, but don't have leadership benches. So how do they create, solutions at scale? How do they build a leadership bench? So that was the premise with which ILSS was born. I'm going to just divide my talk into two sort of sections. One is, of course, broadly talking about India's development story. Really, it's a remarkable story of 75 years, and we are looking forward to the next 25 and Viksit Bharat, and of course, a little bit on decoding this impact sector. I'll then spend a little bit of time talking about how you as an individual could leverage your experiences, how could you engage with the sector, avenues of engagement, and also some successful transitions, people who have move from corporate and other professions into the sector, and how are they adding value, what are they doing. So a little bit on that. So India's development story is and I must say I'm an optimist. I always see the glass half full. I do believe that I'm so close to the sector, work in the sector, that it gives me a great deal of hope. So even while I share some of the challenges we have, I have to always begin with the story of where we were in 1947 to now, all the milestones we have achieved. We must look at that with, must have that in context. And then, then talk about all the challenges and how in the next 25 years we can aim at overcoming most of them. So, just a quick question on, I don't know if people have chat windows here, but what comes to mind when you think of, India today? How do you feel about India today? If there is a way is there a possibility that people can put this on a chat? Or, because it's always good to hear how people are thinking today about India. Mr. Rao, if you have a thought, do you feel optimistic? Do you feel concerned? Any thoughts, Dr. Prasad?
Somebody says more polarized. There is a message in the chat.
Oh, there is a message more polarized.
Maybe
Huge changes, ma'am. Huge changes. I think people who have gone out of the country, Indians 5 years back, when they come back, they themselves say that.
Right, absolutely. So there is obviously there are areas of concern, there are areas to celebrate and lots to celebrate. And I'll start by talking about how we were and it gives you a perspective really, because during independence, India's GDP was at about 30 billion, and today we are talking about a 5 trillion economy. It's a remarkable story. Our life expectancy during our independence was, we've doubled our expected life expectancy. We were at around 32, 33 years. And now we are, more closer to 70 years as an average life expectancy. We've seen a phenomenal rise in literacy rates since independence. We've, seen it was around 12% literacy, which is now at 74%. These are remarkable strides for a young country. Even India's under 5 mortality rate fell from 26% during the 50s to only about 3.4%. Look, 3.4% is also not acceptable, but look at what where we've come. So it's something worth thinking about. Of course, the national highway construction, it's very interesting that we had only about 20,000 kilometers of highway constructed, which is now at more than 120,000 kilometers, and you can see all that development, the focus on infrastructure happening all around you. I live in Gurgaon, and it's a 20-year-old city. Lots of problems. It's not like it doesn't have its challenges, but it's a city that's come up in the last 20 years, and I live here, But of course, there is the challenges, and as someone mentioned, there is huge income inequality. I mean, 50% of the wealth belong to just 1% of the wealthy in the country, and 40% would own less than 6% of the wealth. And this is, of course, a matter of great concern. And this is something that we must be very well aware of then on how do we address wealth inequality in India. Of course, our educational challenges are there. You see, everyone hears about the ASA report that comes out every year, which tells you about learning outcomes. It talks about 50% of all children in class 5 are not able to read a class 2 textbook fluently, or even 25% of class 8 students are not able to read a class 2 levels textbook. And 75% of all children in class 3 are not able to read a class 2 textbook fluently. So the ASA report and other data we have says we have ways to go, and we've achieved enrollment, but how do we get how do we build a stronger education? And the good news is there is a focus on foundational literacy, numeracy. The Nipun Bharat mission is really focusing on a foundational literacy, numeracy. We have a wonderful new education policy, which is very forward thinking. However, there are challenges. These are the challenges we face. Gender, very close to my heart. Gender inequality in India today, it's a part of the inequalities, because women's labor force participation, while we are almost 50% of the country, we are, 27% in the workforce, and we have only 11% representation in the Lok Sabha today, or 1/3 of all the crimes reported are really cruelty against women. These are not good data, and really add to the inequality perception. We need to look at equality holistically and bring women more into the mainstream, into the labor force, and we have to do a lot of work for that. We need to get enrollment of girls while 100% in primary education, which is great. 74% are not enrolled in higher education. They are dropping out due to variety of reasons, right? As they don't have toilets, and then it's not safe, and for various reasons, adolescent girls drop out of going back to school. And all these need to be addressed. These are areas of concern. Lots of work to be done. Of course, we don't do well in the global hunger index either. India ranks 107th out of 121 countries in the global hunger index. We are the top in malnutrition, so not a good data at all. And we do worse than our neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, and even Pakistan on this index. We've also got the largest number of TB patients. These are all areas we should be aware of and look at how we can solve them. We have come a long way, and I feel very optimistic that with a lot of will and with a lot of focus, we will be able to move the needle on all these indexes in the next 25 years, hopefully. Of course, pollution. I live in Gurgaon. I know how polluted it is. 14 out of the world's 20 most polluted cities are in India. And of course, for those living in Bangalore, we know what you all are going through in terms of the water supply, falling, the consumption growing, and the ability of the aquifers. Basically, the water supply is not enough. And it's really disheartening, because you sometimes have a situation of floods, and you have a situation of drought, and it's really poor management of infrastructure of cities that has caused this situation to arise, and it has to be addressed and it has to be looked at. So really, we have a lot of challenges. We understand that there's a lot of work still to be done. We've done a lot of work. There's a lot of work still to be done. But there is, like I said, I feel very optimistic because I stay very close to the ground, and I meet a lot of organizations, civil society organizations, nonprofits that are doing seminal work in areas and really trying to move the needle, working with the government as well, because government brings scale to be able to solve some of the most complex, intractable problems the country faces. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time decoding the impact sector. And the way we look at it is, if you look at the country today, there is the Samaj, there is the Bazaar and Sarkar. And really, all three have a very important role to play with each other and and together. And today, I feel like Samaj, which is civil society or society, has to step up and do its bit to, to be able to create more solutions for society, to be able to create a better society. Because if you let bazaar control narrative, you might, you will see exploitation of a certain, type. And therefore, it's important that we have a strong society that works closely with corporates, with capitalism, and with the government to be able to shape the society for the country. And just to give you an example of how civil society really, and these are just a few examples, has shaped, so many important initiatives like the Manrega initiative. It was, it's a government program, but it came about because there were a few civil actors that came together and drafted it and advocated for it. And similarly, the ASHA workers, the concept of ASHA workers, which is now so important for the work in public health in India, the concept was born in Jamkhet to Dr. Mabel and Dr. Raj. They started a program in 1970, which involved semi-literate women delivering home-based care to mothers and newborns. And it was taken to scale by the government. And our country now has over 6 lakh ASHA workers. Another example is, of course, the 108 service. The 108 service that everyone talks as a LORDS, as a model of efficiency and scale, was started as a service by EMRI, a nonprofit in Andhra Pradesh, under the aegis of the Satyam Foundation, which was taken over by the GVK Foundation. So, these are some of the examples. I could go on and on how civil society organizations have really come together and really tested, solutions on the ground. And then, of course, often started working with the government to be able to ensure that it can scale. We know about the Sustainable Development Goals. In 2015, the UN adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as a universal call to action to end poverty and protect the planet, and to ensure that 2030 everyone enjoys, peace and prosperity. Of course, there is a 2030 deadline, which doesn't look like it will be met, but just to share that in India ranks 112 among 166 countries for its performance towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Once again, it trails behind neighboring countries like Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and even Bangladesh. There is a thrust by Niti Aayog to be able to achieve it, but at this point, there's a huge gap in how we can go about achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So now I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about the different kinds of organizations in the sector. What are where one could play a role. Just to give you broadly, the social sector is not one kind of organization or the other. There's often a perception of a certain kind of organization that is in the social impact sector, but in reality, there are many kinds of organizations that play an important role. And so to just break them up into various kinds, there is, of course, the operating nonprofits, the work at the grassroots around specific issues. They could be of various stages. I mean, Goonj is a classic example of a grassroots organization doing seminal work. I think they've just celebrated their 25 years. They work on dignity, and everyone knows about Goonj. They work on a lot of relief, but they also work on, building a lot of infrastructure in villages, etc., for the villagers themselves, solutioning for them, with them. There are, of course, the international NGOs that have an India office and typically are headquartered elsewhere. And just some examples of international NGOs would be organizations like World Vision, WWF, HelpAge. Then there are also what we call intermediary organizations, nonprofit support organizations that are really developing the ecosystem of the social sector. And ILSS is one of those because we really want to strengthen the social sector by bringing in talent, by upskilling talent. But some of the other organizations are like Dasra. Dasra works a lot with the philanthropy ecosystem. It does a lot of research. It comes out with a seminal report, the Bain Dasra report. It also does a lot of work in capacity building as well. Then, of course, there are the foundations that these are grant-making organizations that do direct philanthropy. There are aid organizations. There are also development consulting organizations. So these are, again, intermediary organizations that focus on consulting work for the social sector. Of course, there are think tanks, and now we also call them do tanks. So, they work towards advocacy and influencing policy. And then, of course, the new kid on the block, but is the CSR. It's doing great work in, kind of funding causes, but also, trying to create impact at scale. And CSR today, I believe, while it's mandated to give 2%, a lot of CSR is giving more than 2%. So that kind of funding that is coming into the sector is really welcome and much needed. So what are the challenges that that the sector faces? I mean, there are so many challenges, right? There is firstly the intersectionality of issues. If you looked at the SDGs, there was so much intersectionality between poverty and hunger and malnutrition and inequity and environment. So it's systemic. You can't solve for one without trying to solve for all. So you have to take a long term. It's complex. These are systemic issues, and you have to understand that and appreciate that. Sometimes it takes decades for change to happen, because you may take a whole generation for change to happen. Of course, the interplay between Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar is again a very it's a very important thing to recognize and to work towards. How does civil society engage with states and markets, and what is the role we can all play? Of course, there is the regulatory environment. We have funding is always a challenge in the social sector. There's not, even though there's a lot of funding coming in, not every organization is able to get the kind of funding they need. A lot of times it's programmatic funding, not institutional funding, which doesn't help you as an organization strengthen yourself, because you get money only for programs. There is a basic distrust, and I don't feel like people quite understand the kind of complex, challenging work that social purpose organizations do. And we need to change that narrative. We really need to celebrate and talk about the work people are doing in these organizations again and again, so that people appreciate that there's really good work happening on the ground. And lastly, the biggest challenge I feel is the talent gap. A lot of people don't choose the social impact space as a career of choice. It's changing now, I think, with millennials and Gen Zs. They are making riskier choices. But I do feel like it's not been the place where many people have gone. But the sector needs the brightest minds to solve the toughest, most complex challenges. So we really do have a talent issue here. We do need institutional support, and we do need to change the myths and perceptions around the sector. So I'm going to now just spend a little bit of time on crafting your impact journey, finding your impact ikigai. We know ikigai, as some of you know, it's a philosophy rooted, it's a Japanese philosophy rooted in finding your purpose, and finding that your purpose is also something that you get valued for, and you derive joy in it. For me, actually running ILSS, I've had a career in the corporate world. I've been a consultant, I've been an entrepreneur, and now I'm a social entrepreneur. And I can tell you, this is my ikigai. I love the fact that I'm working for the social impact space. I love the fact that I'm working in leadership. And I love the fact that I'm able to play a role in strengthening a sector that is so important for country, for nation building, for this country, for our society, and for the future generations. So I think the important thing to ask is, at this stage in life, whatever stage in life you guys are, what is important to me? What is the issues I care about? What is the kind of workplace where I will thrive? What am I willing to learn and unlearn? What are my non-negotiables? And then, of course, if you look at the sector, because you're living in society. I mean, today, if I can't turn around and say air pollution is not my problem. I'm breathing that air. It is a problem. My children are breathing that air. It's all our problems. And so what are some of the most pressing issues in India? What are the skills the sector needs? How can I add value? How do I engage? These are good questions to ask yourself when you're looking for your purpose in life. And I hope many of you find that in the social impact sector. But wherever you are, quite frankly, it is important for you to have an understanding of what's happening in society. And that's what I hope my talk can help you with. How can you contribute? Lots of people, every week I talk to many senior leaders saying, hey, I want to do something in society. I just don't know how. I don't want to just write a check. I want to do more than that. How can I help? And I always tell them there are so many ways you can contribute other than of course writing checks. Great. If you can fund organizations, please do that. But you can give your time in so many ways. If you come from the private sector, you have built scale. You have management frameworks. You have functional expertise. You have networks and resources. These are all worth their weight in gold. You understand systems, processes, tools, and technologies. So you can contribute in various ways in the sector, to help organizations scale, to scale the problem, to scale the solution rather, and also scale the problem, the organization. These are just some examples of senior leaders who came through ILSS. So, Ishmeet was a typical corporate leader, went through, Mattel, Vodafone, usual track, but he really wanted to be in public health, and it was really something he deeply wanted to engage in. And now, of course, he heads the digital public health vertical at Piramal Swasthya, and is doing great work in building that in various states, but certainly in the state of Bihar, I know that he's doing a lot of good work. Similarly, Anjali is now, she came from, the digital marketing space, but now she's, of course, the head of a wonderful organization called Udyan Care. So these are just some of the leaders who actually came from the corporate world, were trying to find their feet in the social impact sector, and have now gone on to, create value, create, a place for themselves here. Just something I never stop saying, and, excuse the memes, but I feel like sometimes people approach working in the sector as, oh, how hard can this be? Or, can this be my retirement job? Once I've given up working, doing the tough job in the corporate world, maybe I can work. No, it's much harder. It's much harder to work here. It's much more complex. If it was easy, it would have been solved. Because it hasn't been solved for generations is because it's hard. And so, we always tell all the leaders who are looking at the social impact sector that it's a complex place, it's a challenging space, but it's worthwhile. Don't come here with a savior complex saying, I'm superior and I can tell you the solution. I mean, you have to have respect for people who have spent decades trying to solve these problems and have struggled, because there are so many intractable issues involved. And so really it's the mindset of humility, of learnability, of unlearning and relearning that we always say will take you far in this space, because you don't know what you don't know. And it really helps if you can, understand first and then try to find solutions, rather than think that these solutions, these are not quarter on quarter sort of goals, right? This can take a generation to change. And I always talk about the freedom movement, which in the 1910, 20s, 30s, people who were in the freedom movement didn't know when they would see the freedom. But it happened in 1947. Maybe many weren't even there. But it's worthwhile. It was a worthwhile goal to work towards. And therefore, I feel like it's worthwhile to work towards, building a better society for our future generations by, involving yourself in the social impact sector. I don't know if we have time for a quick overview on how we're doing with time, Sudhakar. Do we have time for a quick overview on ILSS and the work we do, or should we just?
We will share this presentation with them subsequently. Probably we'll
That's
give
fine.
them. Yeah.
That's fine. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to then take the questions, and I can stop the sharing.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think it's a wonderful presentation. You have helped us go through what it means when you say social impact sector, and what does it contain, who are the players, and what is the range of key stakeholders that we have. I think it has talked about A to Z of the social impact sector. More importantly, the growth story of India from then to now gives us at one go what is the amount of work that is required to be done now. I think that is the principal fodder for us to stay focused, to stay invested in the development of our country and the people around us. If everything was always good, in fact, it will not be in any case, that is only theoretical. But if everything was good, then we would have that much less opportunity to work on some of these developmental aspects. We are very positive, but we also have to be realistic to understand where we lag and be very happy and proud about what are the sectors, what are the areas and indicators along which we are surging ahead. In a country and on a continuum from 1947 to 2024, there are bound to be changes, organic changes, changes that happen with push, and changes that happen with the benefit of technology, wisdom, and experience. And there are certain areas, in spite of all these factors, we won't change in the sense that they are bigger challenges. I think we must stay focused on resolving, as you rightly put in your own words, we need the brightest minds to handle these toughest problems. I think that's the best description of the sector. We were very happy trying to understand how you build the talent, how you build leadership for social sector, and probably that we can go through in terms of Q&A and bring out more and more interventions, some methodologies. Of course, you have showcased successful alumni, but the process itself and how do you, for example, me and some 10 others are interested in certain areas and aspects. How do we tap into that opportunity? How do we go through your window? How do we get into the command, your entry gate? So all those things probably we can cover in the Q&A. But it is very, very interesting. It's a large sector. Thank you so much for putting it together. We would have understood probably some bits of it, 20-30%, and tied up everything under one label. But today it is very clear. The large space that the social sector is covering is very interesting. And I'm very, very happy and thankful that you have put this perspective and given the clarity for all of us to begin with. Thank you, ma'am. I'll now request Professor Prasad to start this cluster number 1, and then I'll come back for cluster number 2. Professor
Thank
Prasad.
you. Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, ma'am, for laying out the landscape of where we have come from, where we are currently, where the gaps are, what the the people aspects are, both in terms of examples as well as attitudes. So in order to give this discussion specificity, we'd like to ask you a personal question, which is with regard to this. And that is, you've had a long corporate career and then you took a decision. You're also in Ashoka University and then you took a decision. So I think you mentioned 2017 onwards. So that's been about 7 years or whereabouts now. Now, during your journey, what is it that brought you to this? A lot of people who are interested, they want to give some time. But then, there are lots of things which are not happening. Some people come in, many don't. So what was your journey? How did it happen? Where can we pick those, attention grabbers which gets one to the sector?
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. So, my journey actually, I would say, started when I started with Ashoka University. So it was an idea that, in 2010, 11 to build a world-class university seemed very daunting. And I was one of the first people to come on board. So the university came only a few years later, but we were running the postgraduate program as a pilot to liberal arts in a small room, but we had the vision of the Harvard of India. So the audacity of vision wasn't lacking, but the work had to be done. It was hard work. But at that point, I realized a couple of things. One was that in a country like India, if you have the grit and determination, you can achieve a lot. I mean, Ashoka University is today a household name. It's not even 10 years old, quite frankly. And liberal arts, which is what in the early years, in 2010, 11, I used to tell people I work in liberal arts, and they would say, what is that? Today, it's a household. So the beauty in this country is that if you're doing good work, there is appreciation. But I saw millennials choosing non-corp, because those were my students then, choosing to do internships in the social impact sector. This was now 2011, 12, when I was trying to get them jobs in the corporate world. They wanted to be in public policy, in research, in advocacy. They were making those unconventional choices. So that was my first foray into understanding, okay, what is the space that these youngsters are choosing to want to be in? And I started engaging with the social impact sector. And then, second was, of course, myself, I feel like there's not enough opportunities in India for lifelong learning. Today, I'm on my 5th or 6th career shift. But, for the next generation, that will be the norm. They will move because the world is moving so fast. And so you will have to have the agility to shift careers, keep continuously learning, or you'll not be relevant. My father started his career in Mahindra and Mahindra, retired in Mahindra and Mahindra, and that was it. That was the way it was. It's not so, certainly for me and future. So for ILSS, it was many things that came together. One was the CSR money. There is legislated 100,000, 1 lakh crore, money coming into the sector. And this is coming from 2% corporate. It is mandated to come. Does the sector have absorptive capacity? Today, if you look at the size of NGOs in the country today, even 100 crore size NGO would be on one hand or two hands. Very few even cross 100 crore mark. Means most are very, very small. How can you solve India's problems if you're running a small shop? Ultimately, the problems are outpacing the solution, right? It's like putting a band-aid on a growing wound. So this was the thought I had in 2016, 17 on this is the money coming in. This is a sector where the most important work needs to be done. There is the SDGs. We're not even meeting the SDGs. We are living in a country where what are we leaving to our future? Air pollution, water pollution, gender inequality. How can we help people who are doing the work on the ground strengthen and create scalable solutions? So that's how ILSS was born, to be able to build the capacity of the social sector, because there's not enough, unfortunately, money to build, strengthen NGOs, build technology solutions, build financial solutions, etc. So the ILSS really is an intermediary organization looking to strengthen the social impact sector and also to change perceptions. That's the reason I'm so delighted to have this conversation, so that whoever's listening doesn't have a perception that NGO matlab ki khadi jhola pen ke aap flood mein that is also the reality, but there is so much more work happening on at various levels. That is important work. So I just like to say one of the quotes that I always talk about is ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. And working in the social impact sector, you get the chance of really making some change.
Fantastic, ma'am. I think I can see a lot of questions and a lot of curiosity throughout, starting with Ashoka University and the fact that the younger generation went in a certain direction, and there seemed to be a lot of energy there. And then there was economics also there because of the CSR aspect. So more questions came up, and the nature of the sector, the fragmentation of it, and then how are these needs going to be solved? I think it has led to further questions. Perhaps all the answers are not there, but perhaps there is a direction. Thank you, ma'am. We move to the next question, and this comes into this perception aspect that you're talking about. Now, how do you communicate this need for social impact? Where, when you see the headlines, you hear about quarterly performance, you're hearing about a leading tech company, trying to reduce cash burn and costs, and, so many impacts of that. So these kind of headlines are there, a lot of money which is flowing into where you get quarterly results, and many of these the current of course millennials do have an attraction for social sector, but the dominant momentum being that how can I also do something like that. So there is a certain momentum which is going in that direction. And the other thing is that while you have mentioned about these questions, curiosity, and your personal thing, there is a status quo aspect which is there with many individuals. So how do you communicate in order to create your category, create your perception, and create a new paradigm which doesn't look at quarterly performance?
So, Dr. Prasad, thank you for asking me this question. I do believe that the perception of the sector is poor/non-existent. We don't make mainstream media news, and that's really unfortunate because there's a lot going on. If I started to talk about the work that is happening in the sector today, I could take a couple of days. It's good, solid work that is happening with the government, and a lot of organizations are working on wonderful areas of even mental health, livelihood, gender. Obviously, education is, we joke that education is like the cricket of the social sector. It gets the most funding and the most focus, but there are other causes that are getting recognition, which is very heartening. So I think for me, I have, even from when I started in 2017, my first goal was to bring in senior corporate professionals to the sector who are willing to make this switch because they come with experience. Now I can build capacity in the sector, trainings but can I do a blood transfusion first? Can I bring in technology, digital, because how do we get you up to date quickly? So that was our first thought, that can I bring in senior corporate leaders, put them through a program so that they don't see in any learning, there is knowledge, skills, and mindset. They have the skill sets. They understand strategy, governance, compliance. They understand all that. They come from the private sector. They don't have the knowledge of the sector and they don't have the mindset. They don't know how to think about it. They don't understand patience, all that. So I was looking for people. I spend a lot of time trying to talk in forums such as this for those few people who are feeling in their heart कि हो गया, मैंने बहुत सारा पेप्सी बेच दिया या जो भी किया लाइफ में, बैंकिंग किया, आई वांट टू डू समथिंग more for which is legacy building. I was looking for those kind of people. And by now, I must tell you, in 5 years, we have now worked with more than close to 400 senior corporate leaders. I found them. They came from different corporates, different places, saying, we really wanted to work in the social impact sector. We didn't know how. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know how to begin. We didn't know what would be our skill sets. I'll give you a small example. There is one gentleman, he's from the ad agency world. So he was an ad agency marketing. He told me, I want to be in the social impact sector. I don't know what will I do here. Today, he is heading an air pollution action group organization and he builds branding campaigns for the government. He's working with the state government. He's not a subject matter expert on air pollution. He's got a team, but he's building the campaigns and he's putting out the content because that's his strength. So he's building an important organization. So I always tell people, if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? So I mean, come to the social sector because really this is the place where we need all hands on deck. There's so much to be done. You can complain, you can say ye nahi hai, wo nahi hai, but can you be a part of the solution? So for me, Dr. Prasad, it's just talking in every forum, trying to evangelize the idea, and I find people finding me almost. So that's the good news. And today, if you come into the social impact sector, you'll see incredibly bright, passionate, committed people. The best people in the country today are in the social impact sector. I can say that with complete conviction, because they are not only committed genuinely with their heart, but even cognitively, they're solving, problem solvers, and that's really important.
Fantastic, ma'am. I think what you have highlighted is that you're looking at this perception and communication issue and you're trying to sort it out by getting the right people in. And as that initial project, you have around 400 people with whom you have communicated to, and you have done it in such a way that they're able to leverage their strengths and pass on their might in another way to the social sector, wherein they can actually do something which is based on their past, though so many things may be happening. A very, very encouraging direction, ma'am. I hope we hear more and more people coming in and doing this.
I hope so too. I do believe this is the next 25 years is like the freedom movement. Can we look at the next 25 years for making India poverty free and hunger free? And treat it as a movement, because all of us are, it's all of our problems. It's not just the government's problems. We are all society, so it's all our problems, and we should be a part of the solution.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think every indicator that you mentioned in the beginning in the deck where you crossed 100, India being more than 100 in any of that is an opportunity for it to be a multiplier effect finally into the economy. Certainly it will have a multiplier effect. And I think it's about putting this jigsaw puzzle together, or maybe it's far more complex than a jigsaw puzzle. And then finding the right forces to tackle first, and then building up a certain kind of a critical mass. So we are all very hopeful that this direction that you've taken, the people aspect of it, and then getting in the right expertise on it, will go in the right direction. It's a question of time, and it's a question of how many others join you. There are some other questions, ma'am, but for the time being, I'll take one and then I'll hand it back to Professor Rao. The task ahead is massive. You have given us an indication of what you've done till now. What is your plan? You're talking about the next 25 years. So what is your plan?
So I can tell you what is my dream.
Yes.
And then what is the plan? I mean, my dream is that every citizen is an engaged and active citizen. And that would, and I know it's an audacious dream, but in India, we have, if we have reached, if we have been a part of this journey, India is an incredible story. I mean, I started my career in the 90s with the financial services, which is now billions of dollars industry. We were bringing back work to India from different parts, which is now BPO, IT enabled, all that. I was one of the earliest companies, American Express, to do that. So we've seen incredible strides in banking, in telecom. I mean, let's be, I have lived in the generation where I used to make a book, an STD call, and it used to take, time to book an international calls. My husband lived in California. I used to get the international call through after a couple of, I know I'm making myself sound like a dinosaur, but that's the reality we've come from to today where, data is in the hands of, I'm using Paytm with everyone, with the coconut seller on the street. It's just suddenly we have moved so much that we must recognize that there is a democratization that has happened where people are getting this digital democratization where this whole UPI and this whole infrastructure is now being exported globally. So there is a lot to be optimistic about. I do believe that, of course, the SDGs are the crucial. Those are the goals. We should look at how can India be poverty free, hunger free. How do we bring more women into the workforce? How can we decrease inequity? Because inequity is like cancer to a society, right? Where if 50% of the wealth is in the hands of 1%, that can never be a good situation. So how do you build a more equitable society? I think it would come from education. It would come from bringing more, having more gender focused, so diversity, inclusion. So more policies at a fundamental level. Foundational literacy, numeracy can, help students achieve. So there is so much to be done. It's in every space, but we've also come a long way. So let's keep context of what the last 30, 40 years also we've seen. There is, of course, the challenges of pollution, but we are also, more and more people are engaging. That's the good news. I love the fact that there are lots of philanthropists today. Bangalore is, got all these tech philanthropists who are actively giving philanthropy. There is, of course, CSR money. So there is money to help. Remember that anything that is difficult to solve, if markets could have solved them, they would have solved. It's more challenging. Therefore, you should be allowed to experiment and fail because you're trying to do something that is complex. So I think the fact that today I feel optimistic because I see philanthropy also funding mental health. You're not just funding one or two things, but you're also funding underserved causes. There's a lot of focus on gender. There's a lot of focus on adolescent girls. These are all good signs. If there is funding and focus, I think the new education policy is a great policy. I think it's quite emancipated, it's enlightened. I think the foundational literacy, numeracy that the government has taken on, I think these are all good signs for the next 10, 15 years. I do believe this is India's do or die decades, and all of us need to play an active role in that. And it can only be when you start seeing with a extra chashma of society and what is the role you can play in society. So wearing that extra lens of understanding social issues and what can you play. Lots has happened, and so let's not forget that we have made giant strides in various ways. If you've lived as long as I have seen that change. So let's appreciate that too. But I think the next 25 years, I feel optimistic that we will bequeath a better society and country to our kids. And if you can't be optimistic, then you'll probably give up. But you have to be optimistic because you are seeing change on the ground.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think this is the decade where the direction gets reset, whether your demographics is a dividend or it moves into the other D, which is a disaster. With light, it will not be. On the other hand, you also highlighted the fact that there are a lot of wicked problems out there which markets can't solve. And perhaps youngsters will learn far more skills if they try to solve wicked problems, not just the experienced, and then contribute much more, whether it's in the organized corporate or otherwise. And that too is a very encouraging scene. We'll take a pause here, ma'am. Thank you for all the wonderful responses. I hand it back to Professor Rao.
Thank you, ma'am. It's very interesting. I think today we are not only talking about what is the length and breadth of this sector, but we are also trying to see where it has specifically made difference. It is one thing to say that it has made a lot of difference in various sectors, various subsectors. It is also equally important, the other thing, to understand specifically where we have made impact. When we don't go with clinical assessment, we will leave the problems under the carpet, and then a large feel-good factor will come back to do a greater damage to us even before we realize. So it's important. These questions are important. But on the other hand, I'm stealing your words now, we need to stay optimistic. Optimism is the fuel with which you stay invested and with which you get the energy to work on the unsolved problems. And therefore, in the next 25 years, the time that we set for ourselves, 2047, within that timeline, we should be able to solve lots of these problems and figure in a very, very good ranking, very good position in the ranking ladder that these countries are ranked year after year. The first question I will take, ma'am, with your permission, is would you call yourself an incubator for social entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurship, they are incubators, the ecosystem supports. There are large number of funding organizations. There are pitches that go, there are consultants that help. And there's a society that looks at the heroes. Sometimes they also look at the failures. Here, if we move into the social entrepreneurship sector, which you are in, you are capacity building, but can we call you an incubator? Or what is the best description for you if we can draw a parallel from the business entrepreneurship world?
So as an incubator, we are not an incubator as yet. Because there are incubators. See, do remember that in the non-profit, you can be a social enterprise with a for-profit, and that's absolutely fine. There are many organizations doing great work that are a for-profit tax bracket. But if you're a non-profit, then for the first 3 years, you don't have access to CSR funds or any of the institutional funding. So incubators are really important for great ideas to be able to seed it in the first 3 years. There are a bunch of incubators today that exist. ILSS is not an incubator. We are building leadership and capacity training for the sector. So what we are doing is, while we bring in corporate leaders and put them through a learning journey, everything is run through a learning journey, because you have to learn. You don't know what you don't know. Like I said, you may come from great experience in the private sector, you don't know this space. So we focus on the knowledge and the mindsets, and we put you through a learning journey. But similarly, for social sector leaders, who is guiding them? They also need capacity building. So we run a lot of programs for social sector founders, where we'll teach them how to fundraise. Because as a founder, if you don't know how to fundraise, your organization isn't going to be resilient.
Great.
So if you don't know how to build your boards, so governance, compliance, how do you use digital? So we do a lot of learning and training of social sector leaders on important strategic matters of organization building. So I think you could call us an leadership institute that is working to sort of create catalytic impact at scale by working on organizations' ability to sort of learn and scale. So we work on strategic areas, and we bring in obviously talent from outside the sector and place them. But incubation and social entrepreneurship is something close to my heart. So maybe at some point we might go there. But at this point, there are great players in this space that are funding wonderful ideas, incubating wonderful ideas. Yeah.
Great. You are a leadership institute making catalytic impact on various subsectors in the social impact sector.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I want to take one question, which is a little bit about, we were talking about being specific. Before that, let me acknowledge the fact that today we are joined by some very interesting individuals around the screen. They come from education, they come from technology, they come from media, they come from armed forces, they come from cyber security related domain. They come from India and abroad. So I welcome all of them. They are keenly looking at these discussions, and they're trying to learn from this. I'm sure we have some questions from them as well. So, ma'am, the question is, what are the initiatives taken for consequences of climate change, like droughts, water shortages, lack of food as part of social impact? Can you give any examples of initiatives taken in this area?
It's interesting. There are many examples.
Yeah.
There are many examples, but I'll give you a very interesting example, which was very close to me physically. There's an organization, and this is a citizen-led organization. It is called I Am Gurgaon. It's a bunch of active citizens who came together maybe about, I would say, 15. They're celebrating some milestone, so maybe it's a 15-year journey. 15 years ago, saying this is a new city. It has no urban planning. It has come up just anyway, anyhow, somehow. There was no municipal, nothing in Gurgaon. It's just come 5-6 years ago, the GMDA. How can we make this a livable city? And what can we as active citizens do? Because we live in this city. And they started doing a lot of interesting work with the government. So much so that because they are doing such good work, and I'll share a little bit of the work they do. The government is actually wanting them to do more and more work. So they started by getting some 600 acres or some number. Maybe my numbers are a little off, but a huge number, and built up. The government gave them that land to build a biodiversity park. So they took that and spent a lot of time, raised funds from corporates, because Gurgaon has a lot of corporates, so they could raise funding for the diversity park, and they maintained the park, and now they've handed it back to the government. It's been a few years, but it's now a sustainable model. It's well funded, it's well established. They then took to creating, because Gurgaon had the same situation of flooding, because bad planning leads to water not being able to pass through, right? Your drainage systems get this rapid urbanization creates these situations. So they went through figuring out the ways of creating these water channels through cleaning up all the nalas and creating they did a lot of civil, created a lot of work building lakes, sustainable work in the sector, raised funds from corporates, raised funds from active citizens around, but took the charge of doing the work themselves. So as an organization, and it's a small group of people, but today there is there is still, we still have instances of flooding, but it's greatly reduced because of their actions. And I wish I could talk more technically about them, but maybe you all could look at their work. It's just an example of people you can see on the ground that have improved the livability in parts of the city, the walkability, the safety, because they've created these walkways. They've done some interest. I would say just check them out. There are many. There's a lot of work happening. There is another organization that is just going around resurrecting the lakes. And you must have heard of that in Bangalore as well. If Bangalore was a city of lakes, and because of urbanization and, there was no, I guess, greed, a lot of the lakes were built over, and but now there is a citizens movement coming back, trying to resurrect water bodies, manage waste management. I have a young group. The head of that group is from IIM, and he's doing waste management in the Himalayan region. So he's got a lot of people working with him now. He's also raised a lot of money to clean up the Himalayas, build awareness in the villages in the Himalayas on waste management, on waste segregation. It's called Waste Warriors. You can check them out. Just incredible work happening because the Himalayas is also a dumping ground. All the tourists dump, but how do you build awareness? How do you do the waste management there? So lots of very interesting cases. I could go on and on of active work happening. And COVID was a great example. Today, when COVID happened, you saw all the civil society organizations step forward, be it meals, be it masks, be it transportation, uh, you know, be it oxygen cylinders. There was so much that the civil society organization stepped up and did. So, this is just a tip of the iceberg. I mean, I'm sitting on lots more information of great work happening across the length and breadth of the country. And you're right, somebody has raised that more work happens in cities and closer to where there's money and less in Bihar and maybe other poorer cities where they need more work. But I also have a lot of experience of work happening in the Northeast today. Great work happening in the Northeast, in the Sundarbans, in Majoli, in Assam, and getting funding. So it's slow. Sometimes these things take effort, but it's happening, and it may take some time. But I can see the shoots. Let's put it that way. People building, organizations there, and the concentration may be less, but there is work happening there. Yes.
Great, man. Great. Thank you very much for giving us an insight into what's happening. I'm sure there are specific organizations which have a mandate or which have an objective to make some difference with respect to the consequences of climate change, water management, resurrection, as you've given an example of. Yes, it is not just around the bigger cities that the drama is going on, or maybe they are most talked about. But then around the smaller cities and smaller towns in the interiors as well, this is going on. We are aware of several such examples. For example, there is a NGO called Good Universe, which talks about menstrual health, and it focuses only on the interiors of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Orissa. And of course, they will expand to other places after having done some work here. But over the last 6, 7 years or 8 years that I have known them for, I think they are focusing exclusively on menstrual health, education, empowering them, sharing some benefits, and trying to give them some solutions in terms of products that they can use. Again, sustainable products. So they are now venturing into educating people on climate change and things like that. There is another organization by the name Pure, which talks rural children. They supply, they pay fees for them, they raise funds. There's a unique style in which this organization works. The founder actually plays front foot and highly visible. Of course, each leadership style is very different, but then there's a huge visibility for the work that they are doing, and they get huge funds from India and US. There are branches of Pure in US, in California, in Florida, and various other states. And similarly in India, especially in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, they do roaring work that affects rural, urban poor as well as rural children. So focusing only on empowerment through education. And of course, there are many other organizations which, like Nirman. Nirman is a big organization which is roughly managing funds to the tune of 90 crores to 100 crores now, with 500 volunteers full time working for them, and they are focusing on empowerment, education, SDG goals, things like that. So there are beautiful examples this country can be proud of, and this sector is actually creating a lot of impact. Of course, we need to tell these stories by shedding our inhibitions. We should go on social media and talk about this, like the way we talk in business. This is also business. This is also making a lot of difference. And this is what we should have actually in the first place talked more. So I'm very happy I'm reminded of those examples. I'll quickly bring in Mr. Sai Charan, who has been keying a lot of questions. Over to you, Mr. Sai. We can take one by one, but try and be as specific and as
yes, sir.
minimalistic
Thank you
as
so much
possible.
for giving me time. Hi, Anu ma'am. I just have a bunch of questions, but I will ask you only one or two. See, first of all, I just have one single question. Main question is that how will the social sector help to reduce poverty in the country? Because like there are a lot of studies which says that there are studies which claim that these poverty is rising up due to lower wage rates in the societies, lower wage rates of the societies, and the higher rising cost of the markets as well as the inflation rate. So can you please just give me some limelight on that particular factor, please?
So, I mean, I think, there is a lot of focus now on skilling, vocational training, employability. Can we create opportunities for women, self-help groups? Can we create opportunities? Can we find ways of skilling people with a lens, of building employability? I mean, it's a very broad, ending poverty is a very big statement, but there are various endeavors that people are doing to build livelihoods, to build skills. I'll give you an example of another organization that works. It's called Anudeep Foundation. Please check it out. They work on, doing sort of not AI ML, but they do training for adolescent and sort of marginalized communities, lots of them in Kolkata, and where they train these people on a certain aspect of technology, and actually then also place them in the Ubers and in other organizations as at a certain level. So they're doing training. Now imagine that if you train women, and there's a lot of focus on women, please check them out, because I'm not the best person to speak about their work in the technical way. But if you build livelihoods for people and give them opportunities like this, create opportunities, create employable skill sets. So of course, education is one thing, but can you also build? Those are ways that you can, move the needle on a whole community, that can, and especially women. If you know the data on when you make women empowered, then their children benefit, and the next generation also benefits. So I think those are some of the people are looking at it.
So I just wanted to know, does the social sector bridging the gaps between the lower wage rates and the corporates and the current markets? That's
So this is the exact example I'm giving you. If you check out Anudeep Foundation, they not only do skilling, but they also then help place these people in organizations that can give them a decent wage. Because you've now developed a skill set. So check out Anudeep Foundation and iMerit, because that's the for-profit version that does the skilling. But I mean, remember, the idea is that if you have an idea, if you have solved for something at a pilot level, you can always take it to the government to scale. But the idea is to create these, try these opportunities of skilling, and then, the government is always the biggest player. But what civil society organizations can do is test these hypotheses in different communities at the grassroots, at the last mile. And then, of course, the idea is to scale the idea. So not scale the organization, but scale this solution. So then how do you find that? But lots of good work happening. More needs to be done. That's why we are here trying to get more people in the sector. But lots of good work already happening.
Great. The idea is to scale the idea. And your examples in your introductory remarks is that the initiatives which started in social service sector, social impact sector, like the concepts and ideas of ASHA workers, have been taken up by the government, and that's now going on at huge scale and huge impact. Yes. So the job for us in social impact sector is to at least walk the talk and give the proof of concept and make it working at a smaller scale at a unit level. And probably the government, which is closely watching you, will take it over and give it a massive scale that this country deserves in resolving those issues. I'll request Dr. Anita to ask her question. Over to you, Dr. Anita.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Yes, very nice, ma'am, to hear about, the work that you're doing in this space. And I also had a little bit of contribution. I wouldn't say big contribution, but my study was around, NGO and leadership and its impact. And we have taken 3 case studies and we did the work around it. The outcome of the study was basically what you are doing as such. Like, the leadership training and the capacity building, which is the requirement in the MFI NGO sector. was my study. Now, I do not have any question, but I would wish to associate with your organization. Please do let us know how can I contribute to, for a
Absolutely. Delighted. Please do share my email with her. I'd love to talk to you.
Sure, sure. That would be a great opportunity to explore more
Yes.
because I found that there's a huge work that is to be done in that sector. And
I
leadership
think
team, that's
I
the
think the fact
requirement.
that we are a Section 8 nonprofit and being funded by philanthropists shows
Mhm.
how evolved people have come, because most people want their money to go to the end user, and very few people think of the middle. How do you support the middle that is doing the work, right? Because it's like the oxygen, right? They say in the aircraft, you take your oxygen before you put it on your child. But the concept in the social has always been, let's give the money only to the end user, not and starve the person delivering. Now there is a change. That's why we can exist. That no, we have to strengthen the people who are doing the work on the ground.
Exactly.
To be able to do a better job. So that's the evolution of even philanthropy, that we can exist because if there are people thinking, yes, this is valuable for the sector, that that the sector strengthens its own ability to do more, do better, do faster, scale, etc.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I have seen in the study from, 50 lakhs to a scale of, 800 crores was a massive, turnaround for few companies where the leadership, was existing and the others could not survive because there was no leadership skills. And you are doing absolutely a fabulous job. And certainly, I would definitely wish to associate yourself.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll ask Mr. Bhaskar to raise his question. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, your session was like a water, splashing water in the basin. I was like, that's how it was so refreshing. I mean, it's like, anyways, I thank Professor Rao also, for inviting me for this session. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask you, I am a guy who's exploring, I'm moving into a field of data science from established field of banking corporate sector. I mean, Kashi jobs, you know. So now I just wanted to ask you, ये जो आप जो बोल रहे थे ना, you are talking about bazaar and this thing, Samaj and bazaar. Sorry. Now, how do you, at all, these millennials are so, I mean, they don't try to understand anything that what is the long-term impact. They want to see the short-term. So how do you balance between Samaj and Bazaar? I can do it in English, but I'm copying your words over here. Samaj and Bazaar. So that is how about it.
So what is the question? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
So how do we keep a balance as an entrepreneur? How do we keep a balance between Samaj and Bazaar? Because we have to think about the Samaj as well. We have to think of the Bazaar as well, because profitability at the end of the day matters.
Absolutely. No, this is complementary. There is no one over the other. There is a complementarity between Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar. And I always talk about different phases in the evolution of this country. I would think maybe I keep going back to the freedom movement. The Samaj was very strong. There was a leader, or there were leaders like Mr. Gandhi. They mobilized society to fight for non-violent ways of fighting for our freedom, but that was a strong Samaj. And so the importance of a strong Samaj is always, always important. And we are all that. I mean, even Bazaar and Sarkar, ultimately the bedrock is Samaj, right? So I think it's important that we don't give up our role as active citizens. And it's interesting you're saying this, because I met one of the global FMCG companies it's a global company, but I met the head of that company a few years ago, and he told me, can you build this training that you're doing with the social lens for my management graduates that come straight from IIMs? Because I need them to understand diversity, inclusion, understand societal issues. I find them maybe a little too capitalistic, and they need to understand more about society and inclusion and so on. And I thought it was a very evolved because, so there is a convergence. ESG is a prime example of how corporates are realizing their own responsibility and are being made to realize. So I think it's a tussle, but it's a good tension. And but Samaj must always play its role and not cede space, because ultimately we are thinking about the next generation and future generations of this country.
Ma'am,
So as a Samaj, we have to play our role and see how we can,
ma'am,
coexist.
just to spare, but just to spare another 30 seconds. I mean, because Sudhakar has said that this is how we impact the social media. I mean, very important in today's world. I mean, let's understand. And ma'am, people like you do not in, come to the social media and you don't incubate. But I mean, these millennials. I mean, they are lost out. I mean, come on. I mean, it's like, I mean, I'm just asking you with an open heart. I mean, it's like, please come to the social media and tell them that what you people are doing. At least these people need to understand.
Sure. No, I agree. Perceptions are 9/10 reality, and the perceptions need to be addressed. For example, Delhi was considered the rape capital, still probably, and there are 33 million people living in Delhi, and for half of them are women. It's not the rape capital, but that's the perception that is caught on in the global consciousness. Now, who's fighting that perception? We are women living in Delhi, navigating Delhi. It's not ideal, but it's not the rape capital. So I'm just saying, I agree with you. There's a lot that needs to be done in terms of, I call it under the ocean. The social impact sector is under the ocean. It's a vibrant ecosystem doing great work, but it's just not seen enough. So I take your point. We need to talk more, address millennials, get them energized, excited about their country, and not be cynical, and be a part of the solution, like I say, rather than complaining, be a part of the solution, have agency that they can be, and give them ideas and examples. Like I said, this young man who's given up his IIM, from IIM, he probably had a cushy job, gave it up to solve the Himalayan waste management. He's building his organization. It's hard work for him. He struggles and struggles, but he's leaving a legacy behind, which is for future generations. So he's a hero in my mind.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your patience. There's one question I will take from the list, and then I have a very, very, very interesting point to discuss. At that time, I will request Professor Prasad also to come in. Before that, this is the question on what do you think the data science field should keep in mind to ensure balance between social welfare and the social welfare scheme and its impact? In the sense that what are the metrics that one should really go by, should be after them? In the beginning itself, what kind of templates that are supposed to be built in? Probably that is the logic behind this question.
So I'll tell you something. I think the one thing that we are struggling a lot with is data in the social impacts. We talk about 3 million NGOs. We don't know if that's even true. The reality is that there is just not enough data or focus on data. It's a very nascent sector, and so there is a lot of work in building credible data around a lot of the impact work that's happening. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist enough, and so that's all I can say. That's all I can say.
Okay,
I think
I understand.
if you are from that field, think about investing your expertise and work in the sector.
Great, ma'am. Other interesting question is, for example, there are a bunch of guys who come to you and say that they would like to be ushered into the social impact sector, and you're the right person. So they have seen this leadership conversation, and then they knock at your doors and say, "Ma'am, we are interested in this." What would be the criteria for you to reject at least one of them out of the four?
We actually reject many.
Okay, please tell us.
I'll tell you, I will reject you if, I won't tell you I'm rejecting you, because clearly, but we'll find ways of not engaging. I think humility. You have to have the humility to listen, to learn, There was a professor who always used to teach at Ashoka who would talk about, all the work happening in the air-conditioned offices of the Planning Commission for on-the-ground policies without any understanding of what is required. So he would say, oh, the work is happening in the air-conditioned office. It was just a joke. But what I'm trying to say is, if you don't understand, if you don't have the humility and the patience to listen, to learn, to unlearn, to seek answers, you're not going to succeed. In fact, you might do more damage, because you might be very quick to solution, thinking, I've been successful in corporate or wherever, in my enterprise, it's the same thing. Let me do it this. You'll waste a lot of money, resources, time, and it's not going to solve any problem. And we've had many examples of, so I always look for humility. I feel like corporate success does sometimes make you very hardwired. You feel like you can take on everything. So I'm always looking for that. I also look for people who are not thinking of this as a retirement job, because boy, is it hard. My husband is in the corporate world, very senior, but in setting up Ashoka University, I know that I probably worked 3 times as hard, made less than half the money he made. But these are legacy building institutions. So for me, that's my legacy, that I was a part of building Ashoka, and also now that I'm involved in building ILSS. So it's very hard work. So it's not a retirement job. And it's the approach. If your approach is from a place of, oh yeah, I don't know, arrogance, then we won't say it, but we look for that. We look for humility, I think, number one.
With years of experience, I'm sure you can easily cite those traits in individuals when you interact with them, and probably strike off without being upfront about it, of course. Yeah. Good. That was a very curious question from my side. That's why I raised that. The other important thing for which I have requested Professor Prasad also to join is that when our youngsters fill up applications for admissions into foreign universities, uh, there is a definite requirement to prove that they had immersive experience in some of these social sector activities, right at the school level, or maybe at plus 2 level, or even undergrad level. And all of them believe, and I don't know the hard data, but all of us believe that if you have had some kind of proven internships and some track record of delivering something on the ground as part of any NGO, your resume would look more attractive and you would land an admission far better. You have far better chances compared to those who don't. Be that as it may, as a background, in India, the universities and institutions that seek admissions from youngsters, we still are going by the hard skills. We are still going by the academic, scholastic performance and the numbers related to that performance. But we are not yet focused on drawing people and deciding people based on their immersive experiences, if any, on the social sector. Of course, to some extent, there is preference given for those who excelled in sports. Similarly, excellence in or track record in immersive activities of social sector are not part of the structure of our admission process when we evaluate their entry. This is where I wanted your inputs, because you also work with Ashoka University, and you have years of experience of looking at youngsters and leaders at a different age as well. How important this is, and what is the way forward? Both of you, please respond.
Dr. Prasad?
Yeah, I would take it beyond admission. And I had a question, but I'll come to that later. And that's about how universities play a part, institutions play a part. The current momentum in our country is to connect the labor market with universities. Okay, there itself, there is a huge gap. And they'll say that you lost a decade because of that. Now, on top of that, you have something which is with respect to the social sector. Now, there needs to be some sort of triangulation here. And therefore, it needs to come within the program. It's not a question of doing it only for admission. There's a lot to be learned in various kinds of skills, whichever the discipline may be, with respect to how you can engage it with respect to the social sector. Because all these problems, all these services, all these solutions that one is talking about is always there across the country. Maybe the numbers are less, but all towns, villages, they have many of these products and solutions in India today that the city has. Now, how market impacts society through consumers is also something which needs to be triangulated. So institutions have a great role to study that. One of the points that ma'am was making is that this business of trying to close in a hurry if one comes with a corporate mentality. Now, institutions can play a role there through research. And Dr. Anita was mentioning about that through her research. The point is, and there was a mention about no documentation, no data. That's where institutions come in. And in fact, many of our institutions are very near Bharat than cities. While there are many institutions in cities, there are many institutions which are nearer villages. Now, if you leave out, and I keep saying this again and again, if you don't go after this race that I would also like to be like an IIT or I would also like to be like an IIM, and you focus your institution and on trying to see what you can do for the local economy, ecology, try to see what you can do for people, the social sector there, see how you can document it, see what lessons you can get from it, see what feedback you can give to the government, because you're a third party. So if the government thinks that third party saying that this is scalable, there is something, and the government will tend to validate it better. Government is interested in impact and in impact studies. So there's a lot which can be done to divert students into that as much as the market. Because like the, I guess it's Unilever, from the mention you made of the companies have started looking at it that way. So markets and market players, at least the more professional ones, have understood this. And therefore, it's the need for educational institutions to ensure that both these things are there. So I think programs need to include it. Courses need to include it. There needs to be an integration. It's not a question of, just economics, an economics question alone. Today, the problem is wicked. So it's not economics alone. It is cross, it is interdisciplinary, it is intradisciplinary. So you need a program, an educational program, particularly at undergraduate, they've got a lot of courses. And with the new education policy, there's a diversity of courses. There's a wonderful opportunity to put all this together by institutions which have a visionary outlook. I'll pause there.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I totally endorse what you said. So I'll give you an example. When we ran the Young India Fellowship, we had a 9-month internship where they could choose to work on a problem. Nobody wanted to work in the corporate. They could have done an internship in the corporate sector, but they all took the opportunity to work in the nonprofit world. There were many nonprofits that would come to them with projects, and they would spend 9 months working in that. That's one thing we did. But the other thing that was very interesting at Ashoka was we launched something called the Chief Minister's Good Governance Associate Program with the state of Haryana. It was, like you said, Ashoka is in Sonipat in Haryana. And we had 21 districts of Haryana. So we would get these really handpicked young people who would be at the district level working with the DM, but also talking to the CM on what is happening in terms of policies and stuff. And that CMGGA program, smart kids, they're not all Ashoka kids, they're from anywhere, but Ashoka was supporting the whole program. They have done seminal work in their districts, just keep seeing what is happening. But these are young people. In fact, today, my chief of staff, she is from the CMGGA Haryana program. So totally understands on the ground, used to talk to the chief minister. They had his ear. I believe every 6 weeks or 8 weeks, he would sit with these youngsters and talk to them about what they're seeing at the district in terms of some of the policies. So many things. We also started an incubation at Ashoka because, like you rightly said, young people, parents won't let them take jobs in the social sector, right? Because, you make very little money. So we started a Mother Teresa Fellowship at Ashoka University where if you got a job in an NGO and you wanted to do it and you were being paid 10,000, 20,000, we at Ashoka University would give you another 20, 30,000. So, 50,000 is a good amount so that your parents will also allow you to work for 2 years. We'd pay them that money so that we wanted them to. And today, many NGOs of these youngsters, one is in Punjab doing great work in the state of education of Punjab. They're all from this Mother Teresa Fellowship. They got that boost for 2 years. They got this extra funding from Ashoka University. They got a chance to work in the sector. And then obviously, after 2 years, they could raise the funds and build their, take it from there. But at least for 2 years, we gave them some money to help them. So various ways, but I totally endorse that we should integrate it into the curriculum as much even in the admissions. It should be something that one should look at.
Great. Thank you for your views, ma'am. I think if it is done at the admission level, per force, people start thinking in the direction over a period of time that gets into the psyche that we are required to work here. the beauty of this game is that we need to catch them young. Like in our business entrepreneurship, we want to have this entrepreneurial mindset as much as we apply it to social entrepreneurship coming at an early stage, early part of the game. Then they stay focused, because some of the factors that you looked at in describing the individuals is that humility, and you also probably meant that it is empathy. So humility, empathy, a sense of belongingness, in the sense that this problem is not just the country's problems, this is your problems as well. We are all in this huddle together. So if you have that kind of belongingness to the problem, not just belongingness to the celebration, I think we stay invested. I think that's the mindset we need to create for the youngsters, and if we can catch them younger, that's better. It's a continuum. If it starts younger, it's much better. Uh, People should try this social entrepreneurship and fail, so that they get some advice, and we have all this ecosystem built over a period of time that is sound, and also it learns itself, because like AI, in real life, we keep learning. We are wired to learn from our own pitfalls, and ecosystem gets better and better. Just like a physical infrastructure gets better and better when you apply 5 years to every stat, it gets better and better. Over a period of time, it gets built. In my view, I feel that people like you are doing yeoman service. You are creating the awareness, you are bringing in right leaders, building capacity, and speaking on behalf of the segment, on behalf of the sector, and trying to take questions. There are negative questions always, there is criticism always, but you're trying and defending, saying that in spite of all these things, we need to stay our course and do our job, because as you rightly pointed out in the beginning, there's a huge opportunity for us. There are various parameters and indicators along which we are falling short. We are consistently ranked beyond 100 in at least half a dozen parameters, and those are very important parameters. By the time we are 2047, by the time we are 100, we should be shining on all parameters, not just those where the stats are in favor. If the stats are in favor of a narrative, then there are stats which are not favoring the narrative as well. I think if the energy is focused on those, we will be a wholesomely developed nation. And happiness index is one, but of course it partakes various other sub parameters that we have discussed to reach there. And health, nutrition, and all other SDG that we are talking about, if that is understood beyond the poster in some of these organizations and institutions, if it is internalized that we need to play our small infinitesimal may be our roles, then I'm sure together we would have done a greater job. On behalf of ICFAI, I would like to thank you for creating and igniting this kind of awareness. These sessions we would love to have again and again, and we would also thank all the members in the audience who have raised fantastic questions. There are many more questions, but I think more or less we covered the spirit of key doubts and queries that one would have tried to understand as part of this session. We will write to you with the other questions, and you can probably respond. We'll share with them. Ma'am, before leaving, I want to also mention that we attempt a summary at the end of this talk. We need your PPT. If you can share with us, that will help us in writing a summary. That structure will help us. We don't miss out any points. And then we'll share a draft with you. You can approve, and then we upload on our archives. We'll also put up the video. And for those who missed, they can definitely go back and look at ICFAI online website and look for these WiseViews leadership conversations and learn from the video as well as the text summary. You're at your convenience, at your will, at your time, you can keep looking at and learn. And that's the purpose of WiseViews conversations. Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of all of us, once again, thank you so much for sparing this time.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed myself. So thank you for inviting me, and look forward to our association.
Great, ma'am. We'll continue to work. I'll take your details and share with some of the members who have requested for your email ID. I will share and connect both of you.
Absolutely.
Great. So members in the audience, participants this evening, I want to also thank you for this Friday evening that you have spent with us. Next Friday, that is 29th of March at the same time, 6:30 p.m., we will have 143rd session. And this time it is with Mrs. Anu Kumawat. She is a farmer and an entrepreneur who has taught mushroom farming in locations like Rajasthan, Jaipur, and adjoining areas. And she has become a very interesting entrepreneur who is building capacity and empowering women for becoming entrepreneurs by farming. So that is the story we are going to learn from next week. Do come back at 6:30 p.m. on March 29th. So thank you so much for joining, and have a good weekend. Till then, learn a little more about ILSS. Go to their website. We will share the details also. But if you have seen our social media posts, you will understand everything. We have given the link. Once you click there, you will have more getting into their website as well and learning a little more. There is a contact address. We can always write there. But in addition to that, we will share the same with you. Keep learning. Have your weekend going very well, but come back for the next week on Friday. Till then, good night.